Hello everyone. This is the 2020 King's Chambers Open Day. If you're interested in becoming a barrister and you think that you might have what it takes, we hope this event is for you. I'm Matthew Hall. I've been a barrister for 21 years now here in Manchester. And with me are Paul Tucker QC, our head of chambers, and Andrew Singer QC, who's our deputy head. Now, for those of you who are new to this whole area, the QC stands for Queen's Counsel. So that's a very senior barrister who basically takes on the bigger cases and the more difficult cases. And just in case you were wondering, a chambers, as in King's Chambers, is essentially a law firm of barristers as opposed to solicitors. Our chambers is based in Manchester, Birmingham and Leeds. But our barristers appear all over the country, from county courts, tribunals, right up to the Supreme Court in London. So I'm going to ask Paul and then Andrew to welcome you to the event, and then I'll come back. Okay, over to you, Paul.
Thank you, Matthew. Good morning, everybody. It's a great pleasure to welcome everybody to this most unusual of many pupillage fairs at King's Chambers. I, as Matthew has just said, I'm head of chambers. I'm also, until very recently, I was head of our planning department, and I'm also deputy chair of a specialist bar association nationally called the Planning and Environmental Bar Association. That means I don't have very much time to myself these days. Can I thank you for joining us through this very unconventional medium of the virtual world? About 3 or 4 months ago, a very eminent member of the judiciary told me that he thought that we're all going to go to sleep in 2020 and then wake up in 2031 in terms of the way in which we work. Well, at the time I was dubious, but with hindsight, he couldn't have called it more accurately. Since that time, I'm now the veteran of a dozen or so cases, which have all been held on Teams or Skype, as well as dozens and dozens of video conferences. And I find it remarkable that for the most part, the technology has worked well. And certainly in my field, it's my very strong view that this has transformed our way of working. It is remarkable that I'm currently broadcasting to you from my son's bedroom with his chest of drawers behind, his guitars behind me, and goodness knows what else. I couldn't have predicted that 6 months ago. So I don't anticipate that I'll spend the rest of my career sitting in my son's bedroom in front of an array of technology with cameras and microphones. But it does mean that I think that the days of traveling the length and breadth of the country for meetings have probably ended, which for me is not a bad thing. Well, for this event, it's worked to our immense advantage. Years ago, if you wanted to see what life as a barrister was like, you had to find a contact who happened to know a barrister who you could then follow around for a fortnight. Chambers decided that was probably there was a need to formalise that, and we will introduce an organised event just after the millennium, with dedicated talks and seminars, but numbers were necessarily limited to only a handful of successful applicants, usually about 12 or so people. Well, happily, our new digital world means that more and more people can now watch and participate in an event such as this and see what it is that we do, why life as a barrister may surprise you, and we hope will inspire you. As for Chambers, King's Chambers was founded just after the Second World War. It's obviously a provincial set, which was founded by a handful of male former veterans of the Second World War and had a specialism in town and country planning in a bombed out, down at heel part of Manchester, led by a chap called Christopher Norman Glidewell. Well, now, 73 years later, Chambers are based across 3 cities. We've got 120 members, an army of staff and clerks, and we boast nationally renowned practitioners in a range of specialisms, and members of Chambers are to be found all over the country. Our reach and our reputation, I'm happy to say, is national. We no longer name Chambers after the current head of Chambers, which frankly is no bad thing. Nonetheless, you may have picked up that I've only just become head of Chambers, and it turns out that I'm only the 10th person to hold that title in the last 7 decades, which makes my job a bit daunting. Well, of those heads of Chambers, 1 became a member of the Court of Appeal, Sir Ian Glidewell, 4 became High Court judges, 1 less than a month ago, and 1 became a senior commercial judge in Manchester, my former pupil master, as we then called him, pupil supervisor, as we now call them. And whilst I cannot hope to emulate their achievements, I can nonetheless at least comfort myself in knowing that I'm the first head of Chambers from Scarborough. So, can I welcome you therefore to King's Chambers? I hope, and I frankly have no doubt, you will find today a thoroughly rewarding and positive experience. I'm going to apologise that I won't be with you for the rest of the day. I'm doing some litigation, so I'm going to have to drop out. So I'm going to introduce you to my friend and I'm delighted to say Deputy Head of Chambers, Andrew Singer, who will now say a few words, and I shall say farewell. Thank you very much, Andrew.
Paul, thank you very much. I've been asked to talk to you very briefly about being a barrister, and my experience of being a barrister, and then about being a barrister in King's Chambers. And I'm delighted to do that. The first, and I think the main point that I'd like to get across as far as being a barrister is concerned is that it is not a job. It is a career. Some people would say it is a vocation, but it is certainly not a regular job. I have told a number of people over the years, probably much to their annoyance, that I don't regard myself as having worked a day in my life. I have, however, spent the last 30 years of my life being paid to do something which I love doing. In fact, I would go so far as to say that you can't be a barrister, and certainly not a successful barrister, unless you do love what you're doing. Because you are self-employed, which means that you have to be self-motivated. You have to take the freedom that you get from not having a boss, but to turn it to your advantage by making sure that you put in the hours, that you prepare your cases, that you go to visit people when you need to see them, to drum up more business or to keep business relationships going. And that you are at all times when you're going to any meeting or any court case with clients thoroughly prepared. And what will you spend your life as a barrister doing? Well, you'll meet a lot of very interesting and sometimes very challenging people. You will spend your time thinking about mostly interesting and intellectually challenging things, planning strategies for upcoming cases or strategies to avoid upcoming cases. You'll be thinking about what questions you should be asking a witness in cross-examination, how to persuade those most inscrutable of people, judges, that your client's case is right and that your colleague's client's case is wrong. Those are, in broad terms, what barristers do. In small terms, we could break it down to a granular level, but time wouldn't allow, and that would become dull. So not only do you have the chance to do all those things as a barrister, but you also have the chance for career progression. You could become, if you are fortunate, as I and Paul and others in Chambers have become a QC, or you might become a judge or a tribunal judge, a full-time judge or a part-time judge. Also, with your skills as a barrister, you might in fact decide that you either don't want to join a Chambers at all, or after a while you want to leave Chambers and either become an in-house advocate for a solicitor's firm, or become an in-house counsel for a business, or indeed leave the law, strictly speaking, and become part of the wider world of business, or become an academic. So there are lots of things you can do as a barrister and as a pupil barrister. It's a very flexible qualification. So that's being a barrister. But what about being a barrister at King's Chambers, which is an even bigger privilege than being a barrister generally? Well, as Paul Tucker has said, King's is now a multidisciplinary practice which covers the whole range of the legal world, except that we don't in King's do any criminal or family work. So if you were to become a pupil at King's, you could choose to practice in one of our dedicated and specialist teams of barristers. You could be in the planning team or in the construction team, as I am. You could carry on work in the personal injury team or insolvency or property transactions or a number of others. And I'm sure you'll hear about some of those during the course of today. You'll be surrounded and supported by excellent professional colleagues and by a brilliant support team of clerks and our staff who all work to a common goal, which is the success of King's Chambers and its members. So I hope, as Paul echoed, that today is a useful and helpful learning experience for you all in deciding on your future career plans. And thank you for attending our mini pupillage fair. I'm sorry I can't spend the day with you, but like Paul, I'm afraid other matters call. Have a good day, and thank you very much.